Hi all, very happy to welcome you to the session on execution context in JavaScript. Okay, to start with, what is execution context? Execution context is nothing but the environment in which your code is run, your JavaScript code is run. Only by means of this execution context, you will have this reference in anywhere, in any function. Okay, this reference, the global value, and the reference to the outer environment, all this you will get just because of execution context. Maybe if you go to a browser, okay, I can show you. If you do inspect, so this is a execution context, this is the environment. So if you put this, you are able to retrieve value, right? This is all because of the execution context. This is what I'm meaning here. Okay, this reference, the global value, this all the three can be referenced anywhere. If you have a, maybe you go inside any levels of a function, even there you can all access this and windows. This is possible only by means of execution context. Okay, it is the environment, nothing but the environment which the code is run. So the execution context, we have a global execution context, and for each function, an execution context is created. Global execution context is created when you start executing any file. Okay, any file. Maybe if you go to console and try to execute, there a global execution context is already present. So we have two types of execution context. The first one is global execution, which is already always created for you, and a execution context which is created for a function, which is created when the function is called. Just understand this. This execution context will be created when the function is called. Okay. There are two stages in the execution context. The first stage is creation phase. The next phase is execution phase. Once the execution context gets created, first it will run through the creation phase. In creation phase, what it will do is, it will just scan through the file, scan through the entire content of it. If it is a global execution context, it will scan through the uh, uh, entire whatever is available within its context. It will scan through the entire file, and it will create memory for all the variables. Okay, by default it will set undefined. In creation phase, it will not execute anything, it will just scan through and set undefined to all the variables. Okay, but that is a small difference. If you if you have created any function with old style, old style I mean, if you have created a function func1, then you have created a function like that. In that case alone, in the memory, the function will be allocated. Okay, in that memory, function will be allocated. But in all other cases, whatever you create, variable with var undefined will be set. In execution phase, once the creation phase is completed, in the execution phase, line by line execution will happen. Let us see this with an example. In this example, I have yeah, var a. Okay, you are able to see here. I think I have a var a. Okay, and I have a variable b, and I have a variable func1, which to which I have initialized a function, and I have declared a function in the old function style. Func2 I have declared in the old function style, like this, not like this. This is more recommended style, that is putting the function as a first value object. Okay, as a first value object. Okay, but this is the old style. Okay. Okay. So that's what I was saying in the previous slide. If you do it in the old style, in creation phase itself, this entire function will be allocated to func2. Okay. Let us see what happens in creation phase and execution phase. So for this example, at the end of creation phase, what happens is A gets undefined, B gets undefined, because in creation phase I told you earlier, it will just scan through its file, scan through its content, and initialize undefined in case if it is with a var thing. If it is all things with var will get undefined, but if you have done it with the old function style, it will func2 will get the entire function saved in that. Okay. So hope you understand. So A will be getting undefined because it is done like var A. B will get undefined. Func1 will get undefined, and func2 will get the entire function allocated in the memory. Okay, because it is done as a whole function style. Now let us see in the execution phase when it starts executing line by line. Okay, when it starts executing line by line, A at the end of creation phase, A was having a value undefined, so it prints undefined. And now when it executes this line, it will overwrite undefined with 30. Now in the third line, if you try to execute A, try to print A, it will be 30. And after that, I have B. Okay, B as we saw in the previous slide, B was having a value undefined at the end of the creation phase, as you can see also here. Okay, so B undefined here, B will be allocated with 20. So the next line it will be 20. Similarly for func1, it will be undefined, and once you define it with this function, in the next line it will be having the function func2. Since it is a whole function style, it is created the whole function style, both even before and after it will be the same func2, because in creation phase itself it got allocated the func2. So here when you try to print it in the even before line, you will able to get this func2 printed. Okay. So other thing I want to tell you is, this is what they tell it as hoisting. Even a value, before a value is getting declared, okay, before var a, before that line, even if you try to print a, you are getting undefined. Okay, in other languages you will get a error, because even before you declare something, you are trying to print it in the before line. But here we are not getting an error. Undefined is not an error. We are getting a data type. This is happening because of hoisting. So hoisting, uh, they tell that declarations moves up. So they used to tell it like this. But the real reason is because in creation phase it is initialized with undefined. Okay, that's why even before declaration, if you try to print it also, you are getting a value undefined. Okay, hope you understand. Hoisting is a very important interview question. Okay, so next, so for this example, this is how a global execution context will get created like this. Okay, whatever example we saw, but there is no execution context created for these two functions. Did you see that? The reason is because we have not called that function yet. Okay, so the execution context is not created. Only when you call those functions, the execution context will be created for those functions. Once it gets created, it will go through creation phase and execution phase for that particular function. Okay, once only when you call this, the execution context will get created. Then for the content inside func1, it will first go through creation phase first, where it will scan and initialize the variables with undefined, and then it will move to execution phase where it will try to execute line by line. Okay, hope you understood. We will try to understand it with the example now in the next thing. Okay. Here I have a simple example. Okay, I have a var a, var b. These two are in the global execution context. Okay, global execution context, and I have a func which I am calling it. Okay, so when this, try to understand, this func will be called in the execution phase of the global execution context. Okay, so when this when the execution context gets created for func, the execution phase would have been completed for this global execution context. Okay, so try to understand all those. So once the func is called, it will run through the creation phase and execution phase for that function. Let us see that now. Okay, so at the end of the creation phase of func, so at the end of the creation phase of func, so when it tries to scan through the content of this func function, you will see that it has only one variable. So for that variable alone, undefined would have been set. But when the execution, uh, when it runs through the creation phase of this function, try to understand the execution phase of this is already completed. So in the global execution context, you already have value a to 30 and b to 20. Okay. Now let us move to the execution phase of the function. When it goes to the execution phase and it starts executing line by line, you will see the value a as undefined, because in the creation phase a was set to undefined, right? So it is undefined here, and here I am setting the value to a to 10. So a will be declared, will be defined with 10. So in the next line a is becoming 10. So next, coming to the interesting part, if you try to print b, what will happen? B is not present in this execution context, right? In this execution context, it is not present. So what the JavaScript engine will do, as we saw in the previous slides, okay, we saw it in these slides. The execution context also provides a reference to the outer environment. Okay. So first JavaScript will check in this execution context whether b value is present. If it is not present, it will go to the level up. It will check in the parent execution context whether the b value is present. Okay, using the reference to the outer environment provided by the execution context, it will check in the parent context. Even if this is not available, even here in the immediate parent is not available, it will go using the reference to the outer environment of this execution context. It will go beyond, okay, to the parent execution context of this context. It will go on till it reaches the global execution context. Even if it is not present there, then only it will throw a error. But in this case, we have only we have a global and a child execution context. So it will check here b value is present or not. It will check and it will be able to fetch a b value of 20. So it will print a value 20, not 30, it is 20. Okay. So this, it tries to create a chain, right? from one execution child execution context to the parent execution context, parent to global execution context, a chain is created that is called scope chain. Okay, this is also an important question. So it forms a scope chain to retrieve the value of the variables. Okay, this is called a scope chain. This is about I hope you understood. This is about execution context. Okay, to sum up, what we saw was we were seeing about what is execution context. It is the environment in which your code is run. It provides everything. It provides the scope. Everything is provided by the execution context. Okay, the by means of execution context only we are getting this windows and reference to the outer environment. I hope you understand the third thing now, because reference to the outer environment through which we are able to retrieve the value from the outer parent context. Okay. Also understand by means of this execution context only, even when you go through any level of functions, you will be able to retrieve this and windows anywhere in the functions. You will be able to access this and windows. This is possible because of execution context. Then we saw how the execution context is created, when it is created. If for a function, it is created when it is called. It is not created when it is declared, defined. Only when it is called, it is created. Okay. We saw there are two phases, creation phase and execution phase. Creation phase is the one where it scans through and sets the memory. It will not execute anything. It will just set the memory. Okay. It will set it with all the variables with undefined data type. Only exception is the old function style. And we saw what is hoisting, and we saw the scope chain. When a value is not present in this context, it goes to the parent context and retrieves the value. Okay. Hope you understood. Kindly subscribe to get my future videos. My schedule will be to put at least one video per day, or at least I will try to put three videos per week. Thank you guys. Have a nice day.